June 4th.
Monday, June 4th. We're looking at 6:31. Call to order the meeting of the Manchester Board of Selectmen. And this meeting is being recorded, taped by KPN TV, Access Corporation, future broadcast. The meeting is being filmed by volunteers from KPN TV, 1623 Studios. This meeting is being taped by the Board of Selectmen Secretary for accuracy in minutes. Anyone else who is recording the meeting is asked to notify the chair at this time. And back. All members of the board and people in the audience are asked to turn off, silence their cell phones at this time. Thank you. Okay. We'll start with, oh, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I am temporarily here in place of Sue Beckman, who is out this week. This is not a coup. Things will return to normal, I promise. So I ask you all to bear with me. Before we get started, are there any items not on the agenda that anyone would like to raise? No? Okay. With that, we will have the first item up from Mr. Dam.
Sit next to the microphone. Take a portable.
This on? Hello, everybody. My first time before the board, but I'm Chuck Dam, the DPW director. I think I've met all of you except Becky. I think you're the most recent elected board member, so congratulations. I'm just here to give, I guess, a quick update of the department and things that are ongoing and will be undertaking in the near future. Right now, I think I'll save the best for last, but we'll go with the Chowder House construction is open for the season. There are some punch list things remaining, but the contractor and DPW forces will be up there. So that work is pretty much wrapped up. You've probably seen work from last year's water main paving for services up on Pleasant Street. That work is ongoing. We're just doing final paving and punch list items on that. Should be wrapped up this month. Beyond that, we have a couple projects under design. One will be for Lincoln Street roadway reconstruction, which will include lowering the road by the bridge between the high school and the middle school to give it a better clearance. So hopefully nobody hits it in the near future. It'll also include add alternates for additional milling and overlay from the high school going towards School Street. And we will go as far as our funds will allow this year and pick up the rest on next year's budget.
Is there any kind of time frame in August yet?
No, we are currently scheduled for the July 11th Concom meeting to address the Concom issues. I've instructed the consultant on that job beta to proceed with the design. I think that a reasonable experienced engineer will be able to address Concom issues kind of concurrently with the Concom approval. And so hopefully we'll be bidding. I'd like to open bids mid-July, and so the Concom meeting is on the 11th, so unless there's any issues that come out of that that we are unforeseen, then we'll continue, which will allow us to be under contract by late July, and then we'll have a solid month to do the construction between the Summer Street and the school, and then go beyond the school.
High school, and then further as far up as you can
Yep.
go. So was it going to mean road closures and whatnot, or?
They should be able to do one-way alternating on that. I think there are going to be road closures for the bridge work, so that will be prior to the contractor mobilizing for the work for the roadway reconstruction, but the bridge work
And
repairs will be.
And the bridge work is being done by the school? Or,
The school is paying for it, is my understanding, and.
okay, but we're,
Me and my team will be
okay,
dealing with the contractor to help with the road closures and coordination with the town. Not the
just,
school.
keep in mind, and I know you will, road closures impact programs and activities at the schools, and there are lots in the summer.
Yep.
I guess that's why I was asking.
There'll be access from either direction, it's just they'll have to close it at the bridge.
Right, got it.
So that through traffic
Okay.
will be effective.
Great, thank you.
Another project that is scheduled for.
Before we move on, I
Oh,
did
go
have
ahead.
a question about that.
Sure.
So, that's lowering the road, is that correct?
Mhm.
And that's not going to be an issue with flooding over there?
No, it's only a couple inches. So the running height that we're looking for between the roadway and the underside of the bridge is 13 feet 6 inches.
Mhm.
The survey concluded that it was 13 feet 4 inches. So we're trying to lower the road 2 inches. So there will be drainage structures that get lowered, but not enough to affect any, flooding issues or compound flooding issues that might already exist.
And do you have to take, and this is just my own personal curiosity, how far do you have to do that on either side of the bridge?
The roadway reconstruction will probably go towards Summer Street, up past the driveway for the middle school. I don't think we'll get quite to the driveway for the high school going in the other direction, but it's still being designed, so I don't know exactly. But
Thank you.
100 feet or plus or minus on either side, probably.
How
So
did we end up with just preventative signage strategies for living with this, with the fix, and the inevitable of another truck going down there again?
so how will we, or what are we?
Is there any thinking of?
Well, I know we are doing all new signage, or not all new, but we are doing additional signage as part of the roadway reconstruction. We'll be adding all sorts of, bridge ahead signs and stuff like that. So we'll address it that way. I don't have a signage plan or anything like that in mind, unless you had ideas.
No, I'm just thinking of like, mine popped into mind like Star Road Drive, like no matter how many times you put up signs, people
Yeah.
run into the bridge. So,
Yep.
do you put like I mean, I'm not proposing this, but do you put like a rumble strip in the road so that the truck driver who's just not paying attention doesn't drive straight into a bridge?
I don't think so. But the one that I have seen that I would think would be is kind of the alternating yellow flashing that, said like 13.6 with the clearance, so they see the flashing sign, similar to, the pedestrian signs when somebody's in the crosswalk, they hit the button and it flashes.
Yeah.
That would, something like that.
Or you could do a trompe l'oeil where it looks like it's been banged into a bunch of times, and that might, have people think that.
We did talk about the visual crosswalks, so people slow down because it looks like an optical illusion on the ground.
Yes.
Yep, yep.
Step on the brakes.
So my understanding of the latest impact on this particular bridge was the truck driver who did it actually knew he wasn't gonna fit.
Still proceeds.
So
Interesting strategy.
no amount of warning actually,
Well,
Mm-hmm.
unless there was something in front of that which hit his truck maybe.
like a bad day at work situation, or what he just? He just
You know,
decided to-
Maybe trying to get out of it.
Past that, it's difficult to do
Would they at
analysis.
work?
Note taken. All right. Anything else? Chuck?
Anyone
Sorry.
else on that one? I can move on to other project unless there's other questions on that one. I mean, pretty straightforward, I think, in terms of.
And I'm sorry, I think you already said the specific timing.
I'd like to have a contractor or open bids mid-July and then have a contractor on board by late July, mobilizing to start. So my goal will be to get the roadway work done in front of the two schools before Labor Day.
But to Muffin's point, can
Yeah.
you just make sure that we coordinate with Parks and Rec
Mhm.
and
Well, and the
and the
schools.
school? But I'm assuming the school is, because they're kind of partner, but I shouldn't assume anything. But Parks and Rec certainly as well.
Yeah. So like I said, the street,
Playground will run.
the school is involved in the closing of the road that we've scheduled so far. We haven't, without having a contractor on board asking us for road closures for the roadway reconstruction,
Yeah.
it's a little early to tell,
Yep.
but certainly,
Closures or not, you
Get
can just
there.
assume that traffic's gonna get delayed. and
oh,
people,
for sure, yep,
You know, running
Yep.
around trying to drop kids off or pick kids up, there's just gonna be.
yep. So, two other projects, just that are in design that will try and do construction this year. One is the School Street drainage. It's around Burnham Street down towards, I forget the street further south down School Street, but towards the brook. Additional drainage is going in there. That'll be scheduled to start after Labor Day. And then we have the Ocean Street water main reconstruction, basically in front of Black Beach going up to Summer Street, in front of Adele's house. So we'll be, yep, go ahead.
I do have a question about the School Street. Is that to hopefully mitigate the flooding of the homes that are just downhill of the church? Is that?
Yeah, so this is my understanding. I haven't caught up completely on exactly who's benefiting from what, but in general, that drainage system is undersized and there's a lot
Right.
of additional runoff. So we've already lined the pipe that goes within the easement behind the houses from Burnham to Friend. I actually went there today to check on it, and I'm happy to report there was no flooding issues and that the pipe was only half full. So that seems good. And then expanding on that project will be this upcoming project, which will be basically in front of those houses at Burnham and the church, going to school and then coming down to outlet into the brook. And then I believe the church itself has another project after that, but they're last. And then, so those are it for pretty much the projects that are going. We also, I'm waiting on a scope and budget for the Harbor Loop project, which is the wastewater project. That one is also kind of a lot of moving parts on that one. There was an initial study that just looked preliminarily at 3 or 4 alternatives. One of the options is a pump station, which was the preferred alternative, which would include a pump station somewhere around the marina, and then grinder pumps for some of the houses along Bridge Street that are going into the Harbor Loop. I don't think there was enough information in that study to definitively say that was the best way to go, so we're looking at a little bit more study before we get into the preliminary design, or the design. But if we get that scope going, then that's another potential project for later in the fall. And then we will have wastewater and water treatment plant upgrades that are yet to be decided, but will definitely be happening in the background. So that's pretty much it on the capital improvements. We have, go ahead.
Is that loop subject to I&I right now?
Is that what?
The Harbor Loop, is that subject to I&I right now? Is that where?
The temporary repair that they did last fall, I believe it was, or maybe early winter, that, to our knowledge, is holding, but they had a real hard time finding good pipe to connect to when they installed that repair. And so, I wouldn't say failure is imminent, but on a long term, it's very probable.
Where's our current I&I issues, our remaining major ones?
To be honest with you, I haven't investigated that enough. I'm not sure where our problems are after the Harbor Loop, but that's certainly the most critical one.
So we expect the Harbor Loop is still a source of saltwater intrusion.
Oh, yeah.
So it will continue to be explored and
Is
eventually.
that because you're picking it up further down the system?
Right.
At a same level or reduced level? Or
Certainly fairly significantly reduced from
is there
patching
a
the whole.
percentage on that reduction, or?
I don't know that offhand.
What was the question?
Percentage reduction of the salt water.
salinity.
No, I don't know. I don't know that off the top of my head.
So we have fixed the two major holes, one on Beach and the Harbor Loop. But it's still coming in, and we suspect the Harbor Loop is still a source.
taxes are gonna pay 127.
So that's not a DPW project, but the state will be doing some on the Gloucester side.
I think we had
the roadway.
was that specific to the sewer?
No,
No.
I wondered if there was any update on the rotunda.
Oh,
So the rotunda, the initial repairs have been made, and that's all done. They did notice that when they were underneath fixing some of the piers and gangway below, that the joist brackets themselves had began to corrode, and they recommended a bracket basically that could go over the existing bracket. And so that work hasn't been scheduled yet. We're waiting on the price, I think, from the contractor. But should be cleared up this month.
So just on that theme of other storm damage and repairs. So I know that the guys have been doing some work on Ocean with the sidewalk and
So.
the sinkholes there.
Yep, so we've used DPW forces. We're in the approved budget for FY19, we have a new mini excavator. So all of the salesmen gave us their best mini excavator to demo. So we brought them down to Black Beach, and they've been removing the asphalt and digging below the sidewalk to find the voids, and then we've been filling the voids and compacting it. And rather than put asphalt in there that I didn't think would last, we just did a lint pack and compacted that. So it's very hard. I actually checked on it today with the drainage for the rain, and it seemed to be holding up pretty well. So I think in the short term, that should last this summer. And then obviously the next big storm we have, we'll have to assess again. But on that, one of the things that we wanted to do when we were digging the sidewalks is it was more like a test pitting operation to see exactly what kind of settlement or voids had developed. Basically, if you envision the seawall there, it's not really a seawall, it's more just rocks with mortar in between them. And it's not very big, like armor stone rocks either, just smaller things. And so anyway, those rocks actually protrude underneath the sidewalk. So you can't really dig next to the wall itself without getting into those rocks that would compromise the wall. So we were only able to go so deep, and then because of Concom, we're doing this under emergency declaration with Concom, so we're not allowed to improve anything beyond what its original construction. And so therefore, I think if we get to a point where we want to do a real fix with that, we'll be looking at doing a lot of vacuum extraction to expose that wall on the inside and then form concrete and fill the voids with concrete. Right now, we've only been able to put filter fabric along the voids and then material on top of the filter fabric to keep the fines from washing back into the ocean. So it's definitely just a Band-Aid, but I think it'll hold up for better than nothing.
question?
Yes, Adela Irvin, 113 Ocean Street. I hope you're going to be able to regrade the boat ramp part between the Crow Island wall and because that's the only place where people can put
Is that
boats.
on the the
yes.
Black Beach side?
Yes.
Okay,
on
yeah.
Black
Between
Beach
white and
side.
black on that bend.
And
But more towards the black.
It's all rubble now.
Because we did do the White Beach side.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
that whole beach has been restored in the boat ramp
good.
on that side, but
All right.
on the
Yeah, but
Black
yeah,
Beach side, we
yeah,
haven't finished yet.
that. Thank you.
So I guess
I don't think you have enough to do.
we're not even to the fun ones yet. So from there, I guess just real quick, just maintenance-wise, catch basin cleaning has been completed, or will be by tomorrow. We've done the system-wide flushing of the water mains. That finished last week. Another one that we just finished.
Valve and hydrant replacement?
Oh, so that is will be scheduled for later summer into the fall.
And where?
There's no real one area. That we have a list of about 30 to 40, I think, that are scheduled that we've evaluated. We've done a couple repairs with our forces in-house, but I think we're going to contract out a majority of the ones on the list to be done as
So-
we can schedule.
So the part that I'm interested in is the parts where we will be tearing up roads that residents are driving across, and which roads those will be and roughly when.
Okay, I'll have to get back to you with that. We don't, it's of the 30 or 40 valves and hydrants, it's pretty much all town streets at some level. I mean, obviously, we're not going to go in the ones that are associated with Lincoln Street or Lincoln, they'll be done when we do the work over there. Same with Ocean Street, but beyond that, I mean, there's some across the street at the intersection with Union and School that are also part of the Complete Streets work. So we've coordinated that so that we will be there first to do the valve and hydrants, and then when that contractor is done, either he or his sub will complete the Complete Streets upgrade at that intersection. There's two of them like that. So I can formulate the list and give you the list. At this point, it's hard for me to say exactly when and how they'll all get done.
Okay.
Anything else?
With that, I'll just say the roundabout trial will be done on Friday, and we will pick up the materials that need to be picked up, and I think the crosswalks can stay as they currently are. The adhesive that we use to put those down is actually very good, so I will definitely be using that to pilot other crosswalks or bike lanes or stuff like that around town. As there's other complete streets intersections where stuff like that might be recommended, but I think we could pilot some of them before we make the construction level change. I'm thinking specifically down by Beach and Masco, where they recommended a bike lane.
You mentioned crosswalks, or have we got a time frame to get the remainder of those painted?
Yep. So that's we have one crew. We started hitting it hard last week. We
Right.
did do some of them before Memorial Day, so that was ongoing last week. And so, weather permitting, we'll just keep going until they're all done. The long lines will be. We bumped that back to next week so that they didn't conflict with the roundabout trial. So that'll be going in. The long lines will be next week.
So I had one other thing. So there was a while back we had a study done of our roads to determine a road maintenance plan, with the objective being to, as much as possible, do periodic maintenance, crack seal, and then layered approaches to maintaining the roads so that we didn't have to as often go in and tear the roads down and rebuild them. And so presumably we have a list of which roads are going to get what this year. It would be nice if we could get a summary of those, just so that we could communicate that to people, and we could be aware of which roads are going to have what kind of treatment done to them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I will say one of the things that we did get a task order from Beta, who did the original pavement management plan, to do an update, because I think we have kind of hit that sweet spot where we've done enough other roadway work that they could reassess, and it's fairly short money for them to send a guy or two out for a couple days and basically relook at the database, because those, I think they call them RSRs or PSR, rating, basically the surface rating.
Yeah.
It's just a formula where they, deduct 10 every year, but it really matters how it actually happened, not just what they had in the initial report. So I think it'd be worthwhile to update that, and then in concert with, scheduling the work.
I just have two things before you go, unless you have anything else.
Nope, whatever you guys think. I guess I just, real quick, one thing that I'd like to mention. So we did submit the ASR, which is the annual statistical report for the drinking water system. And one of the things that came out of that, which is something that I used to do a lot when I was in private consulting, was the unaccounted for water for Manchester was at 33%. So basically 1 gallon out of every 3 that we make at the plant is unaccounted for in the system somewhere. So that's a real high number. DEP would recommend 10%.
Yeah, but
So,
are there actually any communities that are down at 10%, really?
so some will have creative accounting to account for the
Yeah.
unaccounted for water.
20% is pretty good, right?
I'd like to see it below 20%, passing the straight face test.
Okay.
I think that's certainly achievable.
So what are you proposing?
I'm going to look into it a lot closer. I've actually asked the consultant that works on our water system to give me an idea of why this is that much. I think, you're certainly not going to get to 0. I think 10% is a good goal, but will be certainly hard to achieve, especially in a town like Manchester with so many private water mains that you really have no way to account for. But there are techniques that I know of to basically go at a private main by private main level and do some sort of sub-metering in the system to get that number down. I know.
So what's our total annual production cost of water?
That's a number I don't have in my back pocket for you. I'm sorry.
It'd be interesting to know what it's costing us, because whatever that total is, it means a third of it worth of flushing away. So whatever that third is, it's a justifiable expense to fix it.
Yes.
Because we're already losing it.
Although I would never say we're going to get the whole third, but we can certainly do
it's costing
better.
us a third, so whatever that number is, you should come back and say, this is what it's costing us, because when it comes time to figure out how much we're going to spend to fix it, it's good to know that in reference, because all of a sudden that number might be quite small.
Sure. Yep.
The other relevant piece of that is that the DEP has a limit to how much we're allowed to draw from the aquifer.
Exactly.
And if 33% of our, water is going down the tubes from production loss, it brings us closer to that limit, and that's a hard limit that we mustn't touch.
Yeah, that'll be a real number. So, just something that was on my radar when I saw it that I wanted to make sure. I don't, we're not going to turn off the water or anything like that, but DEP is certainly going to take notice, and depending on their feeling at the time and the administration, they can come down a lot harder. It's
always good to stay ahead of these things, so can you come back like in a month?
Sure.
With an update on that one?
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're almost out of time, just keeping to the agenda, but on the Rotary test, I understand the role of downtown improvement, but from the town side, are you developing, organizing a plan for how we're going to go next steps with whatever direction it is, and is that done in conjunction with Greg? And do both of you have a game plan?
So at this point,
we're going to be looking for answers.
Yep. So at this point, the feedback that we're getting from the rest of the community, besides the guys on the DIP, are going through Greg's office. And at first it was kind of coming in all directions.
Yeah.
So we've tried to channel it just to one place, but obviously we both have a log going back for the entire.
No, chain of command.
Trial.
It makes sense that we look to Greg, but I think even Greg would say, from a engineering, mechanical, operational standpoint, we need your opinion as well, as you've evaluated as an as an independent voice, especially being new.
Sure.
There's some objectivity that we could actually benefit from. But I think that the two combined should really create the position of the town, and I just want to make sure that we're crisp on our timing, because once this test is over, which I think is highly anticipated, whether you're for or against it, I think we need to be prepared to respond. And what is the time frame? What format is that going to take? I think the both of you need to get together, as I'm sure you do frequently, but I think we need to be crisp on this one. This is a little bit different than where's a third of our water, which is another question.
So part of the question, I turned back to say, when would you like to try
As
to
soon
make
as
a
possible.
decision? So
Monday?
No, not gonna be Monday.
I'm joking, but
No, I know.
I certainly think, I would say, at the immediate board meeting, the next to come, which is, we actually have to have a discussion about when the next one is, but we need to have a preliminary eval. It doesn't have to be the definitive eval, but it needs to be, which is gonna be at least a couple weeks. So I think it would be good to get something, I'm speaking a little bit personally here, but I think it would be good to get a preliminary reaction out from the town but before the 1st of July. It doesn't have to be the final decision, it just needs to be at least, maybe it's just a summary of everything that we've
Yeah,
heard.
just summary statement of the trial.
Summary of the feedback that we heard from people, a summary, a preliminary assessment, just objectively from DPW. We're certainly gonna, DIP is certainly gonna have to have their own position on it.
Yep.
But I think we should get it out into the public domain as expeditiously as possible.
Related to that, I know there has been some clamoring for a public meeting that, I don't know if it has to be just dedicated to the roundabout, but not at the regular DIPS meeting, but separate of that, which would be at a 6 p.m., 7 p.m. type meeting, not a 8:30 type meeting.
Yeah, so all that, so I also think we gotta manage expectations and messaging, like, what I don't wanna have out there in the public domain is that everything's gonna be concluded about the roundabout at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. That's not true. That's not going to happen. But I think we need to have a preliminary, emphasize preliminary readout of what we heard and what took place at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. And then I think we also need to have complement to that, independent time frame of how this is actually going to get resolved. And that a lot of that needs to come through DIP and in terms of what they're proposing. Because,
Well,
So just to be clear, on the 25th, we can give a preliminary,
yeah, we haven't talked about the 25th yet,
right,
but
assuming it's the 25th.
that may be the next proposed Selectmen meeting.
At the next selectmen meeting,
Yeah.
we can give a preliminary assessment.
Yeah.
Do you want to afford public comment during that time?
Sure.
Do you want to sort of promote that as a time for the public to give
At a
input?
preliminary level, I just don't want public impression to be that we are going to conclude definitively the outcome of the test at that next Board of Selectmen meeting. That's
At
not
which
going to happen.
So the next meeting is, Susan going to be here or no? Not-
Yes, so if we want to jump ahead on the agenda temporarily, we were proposed, because of vacations and people
Oh,
being
all
away,
right.
we were going to propose having the next meeting on the 25th.
I will not be here.
Okay. When we hash that one out later,
Yeah.
at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, I think it's important that we have a preliminary readout of results from the test. That's definitively all we want to achieve. There is no conclusion or final decision on the roundabout test at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. As part of a preliminary readout, I think we need three things. One, we need DIP to speak on their own. I think we need to have a summary of public reaction, pro, against, whatever people had to say, that really comes through your office, Greg. And then thirdly, I think we need to have an independent DPW operational engineering assessment, eval, independent of public sentiment, independent of DIP sentiment, your own sentiment as to the operations of the town, how it went.
Sure.
And we can have the public's welcome to attend any Board of Selectmen meeting. So I don't think we need to necessarily emphasize that. It's always true. I wish they were here today.
Yep. One other comment, just real quick. The ability, I think, for the town to go forward with any more than just superficial improvement to that intersection, if it were going to happen as part of the Complete Streets funded grant, wouldn't be available until not this year, but next fiscal year. So regardless of any findings in any direction, we're not going to be out there building anything.
We should talk about that.
So.
I'm just responding more to, I think, an interest of the public to know.
Yeah.
Because we've just put the public through something. I think the public should be given at least preliminary results as to what we found.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be conclusive. It's just, it's almost like a raw data summary.
Yep. Yeah, I just think there's some thought that, I don't know where these things just,
I would expect that if DIP is taking ownership of this from a test standpoint, as they have been, that they should be, it's one of the things I would recommend that they actually explain, is where does this go from their standpoint? Because the board didn't necessarily create the test, and the DPW didn't create the test, so that's kind of where we are. Lastly, we're kind of running over here, which is not speaking well of my turn at this, but I think one thing just to be cognizant of in aggregate of everything you've been talking about is, I'm speaking as a resident here almost, I receive all of the alerts. I'm set up to get every ping that you guys have, which is fantastic in terms of highly reactionary flow of information coming out of you guys. And then I'm hearing this readout today, which is like super macro picture, which is awesome. Like, I think there's a lot of filling in between. So in a way, I'd ask you to think about the list of projects that you just rattled off, sanitize them in your own way in terms of public consumption, in the way that you feel appropriate, and figure out, maybe work with Greg or work with Susan, who has spent a lot of time thinking about communications in the town, and think about a way of actually getting that in a more regimented, standard, repeatable, frequent format, either through the Cricket in terms of an update from DPW, maybe once a month, as just saying, here's the projects going on, this is what, maybe here's a rolling three-month window or 6-month window of projects that are potentially going to be happening, or do it on the town website in a easy, single way to see it. Here's all the things going on, here's against time. Somehow to like see what's going on so that people aren't getting their alerts and finding out about a road closure the same day.
Yep.
You know, so
Sure.
it just might be helpful.
Yeah, I think certainly the website will be the first stop, and I can,
Yeah,
that's easily updatable, and then, you know, a follow-up thing in the Cricket shouldn't be an issue.
I would think, I don't want to create work for you, but I would think dynamically.
I do it
like,
anyway.
You throw something on the website doesn't mean the bases are covered, because
Sure.
no offense to the town, I don't think very many people go to the website. All right, I don't think our site visits are through the roof. You know, a different population reads the Cricket, so you got to cover your bases. I think we got the phone alerts covered.
My letter in the Cricket will say, check the website.
Yeah. That won't go over well, but that's, I'll leave that to you. All right, thank you.
No, thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, next up, Chief.
Chuck,
Hey, Chuck.
dropped a pen. Something went on the ground.
The floor is yours.
Good evening. My understanding is I'm here to talk about the call firefighter compensation package that we've proposed. I assume that you've all had a chance to look at it. Before I get started, does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one, let's see, I'll go to the proper page on that, where it talks about under section 8, part C. It talks about call firefighters are covered if driving a department or town vehicle to and from training. I'm just curious if something happens during that time that is operator error. Is that firefighter still covered then by, trying to figure out how to say this right. Okay, it says call members are not covered by the town during the time they drive their personally owned vehicle to off-site training location or when driving home. Call firefighters are covered if driving a department or town vehicle to and from training. Is the coverage negated if there's an accident due to their driving, texting, whatever?
I'd have to defer to the town administrator or legal counsel
So
on that.
that'll be an insurance adjustment call. So if the person is willfully negligent,
Right.
then no, they're not going to be covered.
I would think not, but it just was kind of,
Right.
Open
So
that.
this is an area where some consolidation by councils is being recommended. So we will have a revised version of this. So you may see a scaled back, consolidated version of all these different possibilities.
Thank you.
Just to give a little bit of history, call firefighters have been operating under a framework that, to the best that we can figure out, was never approved at the appropriate level. So in order to keep faith with them and move forward, we've developed this new framework. It rewards performance as opposed to paying someone for doing nothing. And call firefighters are in place to come to calls. And so consequently, the vast majority of the compensation is associated with coming to calls. And then there are other stipends that flow from there. There's still a pathway for somebody to be a member of the department, show up when they can, but they won't receive the full financial benefit. And that's really what the bottom line associated with this new package is. It's a legitimate, approved framework, and it rewards performance.
So to that end, the biggest difference here is specifying a minimum number of calls you need to respond to on an annual basis. So that's, would you say, is the biggest change?
Correct.
So that's what the chief means by we're trying to reward
Yeah.
people coming to calls.
Well, and additionally, as was in the report, just talking about the greater number of years, the greater the benefit.
Right, there's a longevity incentive.
Yeah.
So this plan, if people make that minimum, that 52 calls a year, they actually have an ability to more than double the current amount. So from that perspective, it's designed to encourage people to be call firefighters and respond to calls.
Is that really the goal?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a problem with them responding now? Getting call firefighters to respond?
Yes. In the sense, problem may not be the correct word, but we don't have a overwhelming response from call firefighters to the variety of calls that we have, because oftentimes it's not calling everybody back for a fire. It's calling one person back to provide station coverage while we're transporting a patient to the hospital. Classic example is what happened last Friday night with the boat fire out here on the ramp. We had 2 firefighter paramedics going to the hospital. In a situation like that, we call for a career firefighter. In the absence of a career firefighter coming back, we call for a call firefighter, and neither career nor call firefighters respond to the call back. So that's why Lieutenant Dessette ended up responding to the boat fire by himself. Our goal is to always have a minimum of 2 people in the station, because 2 people can work as a team, whether it be with the ambulance or on a smaller fire. And we just don't get a lot of response. And part of the challenge is that of the 7 or so active people in the call department, or I should say members who are call firefighters, we don't have a separate department. It's all one department. There's only one call firefighter who lives in town. And so time and distance oftentimes becomes a problem.
So is wage, I guess what I'm trying to get at is wage the driver of improving the call firefighter numbers?
You have to consider it as one aspect of it.
I'm just asking, okay. So it's not the driver.
I don't think it is. I
So
think
if we increase the call fighter fees or hourly wages, is the intent to literally increase the number of call firefighters? Is that what we expect will happen?
I don't think that you can say you can expect it to happen. It's a possible incentive for someone to want to become a call firefighter. There's a number of different aspects to wanting to be a call firefighter. The biggest reason is a desire to serve and be a contributor to the community. Another part may be financial. If it's worth my while to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to come in for 45 minutes or an hour while the ambulance is transporting to the hospital, and I'm recognized for that, and I do that once a week, then I get something at the end of the year for it. And then the third reason that people will become call firefighters is they're looking for an on-ramp to possibly a full-time firefighter's job someplace. But in the absence of emergency medical services, certification, EMT, paramedic, that component of being a call firefighter is a challenge, and that's why I talked about service first. The reason that people should be call firefighters is a desire to serve and be part of something bigger than themselves, and then those other two things sort of add to it.
So I guess I want to make sure that the call firefighters are being paid fairly and certainly at market rate.
Well,
I want to separate that from any hypothesis that we have that increasing wages is going to increase the number of call firefighters if that's the problem. So I'm trying to understand what's the problem we're trying to solve. Are we trying to solve a compensation problem, or are we trying to solve an issue of not enough firefighters?
it's like everything else that I sit before you and talk about. It's very complicated. And so all of the things that you just described are in play. There's
Yeah.
no one thing
Well-
that you can fix, and that's going to increase the number of call firefighters or increase the response by the limited number of call
Yeah,
firefighters.
I don't want to oversimplify the world, but I also don't want to make everything complex, right? Like, if we have a problem, we need to work through how to fix the problem. And I just want to make sure I understand which problem we're trying to solve here. Are we solving a wage inequality problem? Or are we solving a, we don't have enough call firefighters? And we believe that increasing wages is going to increase the number of call firefighters.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Well, no, you're the head, so which is it? What are you trying to solve?
I'm not being flip,
No, I'm not taking it, I'm not taking it personally. I'm trying to actually help the town here.
but the questions that you...
Understand, if we vote to increase wages, are you telling me that you believe that we're going to increase the number of call firefighters? Because you think that's the problem.
It's not necessarily the problem, but it's part of making improvements that a number of different entities within the town have wanted us to do to make the call force more relevant, better, bigger, more reliable component.
Well, as a partner, we have a problem, you and I, us and you, is if we go increase expenses in the town, and we still have a lingering problem that was defined, and we increase costs and didn't fix the problem, I don't care how complex the world is, like, we will have a new problem, like us and you.
And I would offer...
That comes up every
yes.
town meeting.
And I would offer that that has already been considered. If we're getting the participation, then the people are getting paid. If we're not getting the participation, they're not getting paid. And we're not going to be out any more than we are right now.
Well, that's kind of intrinsically my question is pay the issue of why people are participating or not? Yes or no?
It's a component.
Is it a majority component?
You would have to ask the individuals that, but...
You're the leader.
And I can't read a person's mind.
Well, then how do you lead?
How do I lead?
Yeah, because we're talking about your department and the salaries and the pay of your department. I mean, I'm looking to you as the expert.
And I'm telling you, if you look at the report that I gave, the average call firefighter wage throughout the state is $18 and I don't remember what it was, 34 cents, I think. One of our neighbors pays a little less than $21. There has been a concern in this town that we as a department have not done enough to make the call force relevant or robust or increase the numbers. So if you do this and the numbers come up, well, then it was a success. If you do this and the numbers don't come up, you're not out anything because there's nobody to pay.
No, but then we've just increased the wages of the town. So yes,
You're only paying a person. You're only
we are actually in a bigger problem.
You're only paying a person per call. So if you...
It doesn't matter. We've set a precedent of higher wages. So from a management standpoint, we've just actually ratcheted up a cost of the town.
Call firefighters...
It's not something we just try and can unwind. Once you increase wages, I'm not aware of a profession where typically when they decrease wages in an industry, it's actually a sign of the industry.
The call firefighter wages haven't been increased for 8 years.
I'm just trying to understand which problem we're solving. So if it's an issue of market comparability, then that's a nice contained problem, and let's fix it. If you're tying it to a much bigger problem of not enough call firefighters, I'm not convinced, as we sit here right now talking about it, that there's a clear linkage enough to actually go and increase wages. That hasn't been proven.
Well, I would offer that other places have tried it as part of a comprehensive being 2 or 3 items to try and increase the participation by call firefighters, but everybody's running into this. So unless you try all of the things that are available to you, because I'd offer that we've tried the other things. We've advertised, we've got nobody from the town who's stepping up to the challenge, so we end up attracting people from outside the town. Now, where's the balance point between them getting up in the middle of the night and they don't live in town and driving in and spending the time that it takes to drive here, stand by at the station, and then go home, versus not coming in at all? So the other...
That's fair. So if you're establishing that we have a problem of not enough call firefighters and that's an issue, and you're simultaneously saying that at the same time we're not paying market rate, if we have to increase it to get to market rate, then that's one problem that we're solving. We're still got this big other problem, which wages may have actually no impact on, and we shouldn't even necessarily promise it to have any impact on. We can live with both of those things. I'm just trying to avoid this optics of us talking about wages and it being this leader towards solving the call firefighter problem, which it doesn't seem like there's evidence for that to happen. And I just wouldn't want to set us up to create that impression, because if that becomes the public perception and we increase wages and call firefighters don't show up, then we not only don't have call firefighters, we have a board and a fire chief who are placing bets in the wrong directions. So I'm just trying to make sure we're clear on what problems we're solving for.
Can I ask a question from a slightly different perspective on this? So the fire department budget has an allocation for fairly strict and well understood allocation for career firefighters, less predictive allocation for overtime and for call firefighters, which we budgeted, which you set up in the budget that we vote on in town meeting. So out of that pool that you were anticipating on spending for call firefighters, is it your belief that this recommended set of changes are going to fit into that pool, and that without that we'll actually end up with lower return on the call firefighters and we won't be drawing from that pool, or that this will cause us to use less overtime? How does this fit into your larger budget picture?
The numbers that are in that proposal are essentially accounted for in the budget. I plan for 1 career firefighter a day coming back, and we pay a minimum of 2 hours per callback. And at the career firefighter rate, that's a given number based on the average hourly rate for overtime. I budget or plan for 1 call firefighter to come back per day, because that's about what it takes. We have about 2 callbacks a day where we need somebody to come back, and most days we don't get either one. So consequently, this is planned or factored into the budget, the proposal there. I know that not every we have 7 active call firefighters, or at least those that are on the roster right now. I'm anticipating that not all of those can meet every criteria in there. Some will attempt to meet it, some won't. And so consequently, we can pay for this with what we have. If they all earn it, we can still do it. And to go back to Mr. Steiner's question, I don't have a crystal ball. I can just tell you that people in my position have used certain incentives to try and increase the number of call firefighters, and one of those is better pay and benefits. If you don't try that, you'll never know that it works, and I can't promise that it's going to work. At the same time, we've tried the other things. We've advertised, we've increased the dynamic aspect of our department in terms of what we do and the things that we're doing, and it's kind of an exciting place to be. And those 2 things together, plus asking people to be part of the department, they all play together. I can't guarantee that one or another is going to work, but unless you try, And if the plan is to let the call fire, or let the call aspect of our department fall by the wayside, then none of this is necessary. But given the
Well, I guess that's really for you to define. Like, are call firefighters part of your strategy for growing fire in the town?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
No.
So are you saying that at this point in time, we simply do not have enough responding call firefighters?
That's correct. And they choose not to come. Now, I'm trying to incentivize them to come with this package. I can't yell at them and tell them to come.
Have you asked them? Have you just by any chance called some of the people who haven't responded and just said, or asked, can you tell me why you're not responding?
I haven't had a lot of those conversations as of late because in the beginning I did, and everybody gives the same reason. I'm busy, I got this going on. Do I get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning knowing that I have to get up and go to work at 6 o'clock?
No, but my question is, has anybody specifically said, your package isn't good enough for me, what you all offer is not incentive enough?
No.
Does anyone else have any comment? Nothing? Adele?
Adele Irvin, the issue has been right along that most of these call firefighters do not live in Manchester, or even some of them not very close by. And I think the issue is much more, I don't mean that salary isn't important at all. I just mean that I think that, as you say, they have to make decisions as to whether to get up in the morning at 2 o'clock from a 20-mile ride in and so forth. That's a much more important thing today than I'm sure it was 25 years ago. And so you're dealing with a big societal problem, I think, with this whole, and I'm not sure that just increasing salaries, of course they should make a living wage, but I think we have to recognize that this is, well, it's countrywide. This is not just an issue for Manchester. It's countrywide. And I'm not sure what this, I'm not saying there's a solution necessarily, but I think that either we have to look at having more regular firefighters and fewer call firemen, and that's going to be what the town is going to have to do. And I think I'd rather see my tax money going to a full-time firefighter myself than having this continuing problem with call firefighters, no matter what issue, whether it's salary or it's society or something else. But I think we're chasing a very bad rabbit on this one,
Well, so
without dealing with the problem, which is full-time firefighters.
okay, well, but we have the statement from the chief that call firefighters are part of the strategy, so I don't think we're quite there yet. Maybe we'll get there, but ultimately that has to be defined in your strategy. So I think we're kind of like packing an elephant in the room into a question of wage. And that's where I'm pushing back.
I disagree. You just made the case because I just told you call firefighters are part of the strategy because of the cost of career firefighters. And unless we try all the things that we have available to us to get more call firefighters, we'll never know if it's going to work.
I'm not opposed to you testing into infinity to find out how to get more call firefighters. I'm just trying to understand what you're actually suggesting. And if increasing wages is kind of your big bet on increasing call firefighters, that's what I'm trying to understand. Is this your big strategy for increasing call firefighters?
I'm not a betting man. I'm just offering that this
Chief,
is
you're
one.
the head of fire. You know more about fire than anybody in this room, frankly, and anybody in this town. It's your department. So to fix the problem of the call firefighter numbers, what is your strategy? Is it increasing wages that you believe is what's going to solve the problem? You're the expert.
I don't know. What I'm trying to tell you is that other people in
It
my...
concerns me more than anything that you keep saying you don't know.
I don't have a crystal ball. I can tell you
But
that
you're
other...
in charge.
May I finish? Other people in my position have done exactly this in an attempt to get additional call firefighters. There are only certain things that you can do, and I've already told you what they are. You can increase wages, you can make the environment inviting, which we've already done, and you can try and recruit people who are interested in the job for those other two reasons. There's nothing else that we can do.
So if everything fails, what do we do next as a town, as the head of fire?
If everything fails,
If all three things that you just listed fail, what happens next?
then we don't have a call department.
And then what direction does the department go?
We focus on the career firefighters that we have.
So we should be prepared for that.
We need to be prepared to provide a level of service that everybody's gotten used to, and we're trying to do that within the framework of 3 career firefighters on duty, 24/7, 365. All of you worked with me last year to hire that 13th career firefighter, which is going to allow us to do that. Now, what I'm trying to do is get that one additional person so that we can always have 4. I'm here more than 40 hours a week, so I'm the 4th. If we can get a career person to come back every once in a while and a call person to come back every once in a while, then we always have that 4. And that proposal in front of you is an attempt, with those other things I talked about, to try and get call firefighters to come back on a regular basis, not just when it's something exciting, like a boat fire.
That's all I got. So what happens next?
So this was an initial review
Yeah.
of this proposal. There's some editing that Labor Council and the chief will be working on. We'll get a hold of him to do some tweaking of the language and then present that to you at your next meeting. If you feel it's not going in the right direction, that was why we wanted to present it on a preliminary basis.
I don't think it's not going in the right direction. I think that, you know, we're very, very clear, you know, if we have a market rate issue and we need to increase our call firefighter wages to be comparable to other towns, in your opinion, based on data, then I think that's a great thing to talk about. But that's a different issue than wages being an integral part about solving a bigger call firefighter problem. And if that's really what we're here talking about, this is only one piece of the 3 things that you listed. So I'd love you to come back and take us through all 3 and where we are, what's happened, what's been done, so that there's a comprehensive review of what your strategy is and whether or not you're achieving your strategy. Because if you are, then we need to help you. If you're not, then we got a whole other set of questions.
We're not, and this is one component of it. We worked
Okay, then
extremely...
let's have a bigger picture, because we've just isolated this to wages.
May I? And I think if the concern is getting call firefighters here, go to the ones who won't come and find out specifically why. I mean, I don't think that would be terribly onerous.
It's not, but I've already explained to you without asking them directly, but I will. And if that's important, I will come back and tell you. But they all have lives, and they have families, and they have daytime jobs. And the majority of our calls occur during the hours of 8 to 6. And they all work out of town, and they can't break away to come and answer the calls. So oftentimes, I don't ask them why they didn't come back, because I know. And occasionally they'll tell me they're out of town or they're not able to respond because they've got family things going on, so I get it. I
Well,
don't
then
ask
how is more money going to solve that? I mean, if they can't do it because of families or whatever other obligations,
There's no guarantee that it will,
Then why would we do it?
because it is,
You're presenting counter arguments to yourself. So you're saying that it may not work, but yet you're here proposing that we do this. So what do you believe in?
I will tell you that my peers and my colleagues who are up against the same problem have done the same thing. It is something that you have to
What
try.
do you believe in, not your peers? What do you believe in for the best interests of this town? That's the only thing that's on the table. Is wages going to fix the problem?
I don't know, and I've told you that.
Well, then
I
why would
don't-
we adopt this if you don't know?
Because there has been a call to fix the call force, and there are some who believe that the call force can be rebuilt. And
Do you believe that?
do no, I do not.
Well, then why are we even here?
Because I have been
Why are we even
tasked.
here debating hourly wages of call firefighters if you don't think that the call firefighter program can be rebuilt?
And I say that because it's down all across the country. It's down all across the
I don't care about the
country.
rest of the country. I only care about this town. You think the only reason why I'm sitting here is because I grew up in this town and I love this town. I'm not even a politician. I only love this town. I only care about this town. I don't care about the rest of the country. So is call firefighters going to work in this town or not? And you just said no. So why are we talking about hourly wages for call firefighters? Why aren't we talking about what you're going to do to go hire more firefighters, if that's what you believe is going to fix the fire department in this town?
Because.
Let's not waste time here. Like,
Well,
it's
because in previous discussions, I promised that I would try and grow the call force. And I'm trying to do everything I
I
can
think
to
that
do
that's
that.
where, like, listen, like, there's a fundamental problem in you trying to do something and you simultaneously not believing in it.
It's not that I don't believe in it, it's just that I know from past,
Then don't do it.
well, I would think that that's probably a discussion for another time.
Well, maybe it is. Why don't you come back and let's have a discussion about your broader strategy for the fire department? Because that's a better use of time than debating hourly wages for one of three linchpins to call firefighters that you fundamentally aren't even sure it's going to work.
And let me
That's a
just.
bigger question.
And let me just explain, it's about demographics, and you know as well as I.
I remember, we had this conversation a year ago. And like, I'm seeing the same movie again.
And it's not because I don't want to do it.
I'm not saying you're making it up. I'm not debating you.
It's
It's a national trend. I get it. I agree with Adele.
It's a realistic assessment,
Let's just get all on the same page about where we're going with this.
and I like your
Let
idea.
him try it, let him keep going. You've been on this subject now for,
Because Adele, you sat in this room a year ago, and we had this same conversation a year ago, and I don't want to sit in this room again in a year and have the same discussion.
but they're trying.
It's called chasing your tail.
But they're trying different things, and he's presented you with the
Okay.
things that you're not agreeing with perhaps, but at least he's given you
I
a
didn't say I didn't agree
program.
with it. I'm happy to vote, but I just want to believe in his professional opinion that this is actually going to be worth it. I didn't say I didn't believe in it. I'm happy to increase wages if we fundamentally all believe that it's going to fix the problem. But if I got somebody who's not sure it's going to even work, why would I vote on it?
Because you should try it.
Yeah, well, I think we need to get other people involved, because I think when we start increasing the costs, there's a lot of people that have opinions that are counter to that. And we got to be cognizant of that as well. So why don't we reconvene on this?
Right, but you're not increasing the overall cost.
But we're setting a precedent of increasing wages, which is looking to,
So then you just don't have as many call. You would cap the number of call. You don't need 25 call people. You only need half a dozen who actually do this. If you had half a dozen call people who actually performed once a week, it'd probably be sufficient
okay,
to cover it.
then let's sharpen the proposal to
So-
that.
So the
But
cost is.
let's also understand
cost is
the
not
place of
open-ended.
call in the bigger picture of fire, which I think there's two things on the table. One is the call strategy. I'm not saying we shouldn't try it, but let's crisp up what exactly it is we're proposing. And I like what you're suggesting. So let's talk about the combination of wage plus capping it so that we actually address a concern elsewhere in the town that we're not watching costs very tightly. And we head that one off, because the way we're going right now, we're not going to head that one off. We're going to actually just go down the road of
Arthur,
road of
may I
costs.
ask a question?
Hold on one second. I want to couple that with a bigger question about call in general, which this is embedded in this discussion clearly. And we need to have that discussion again. We had it a year ago, and we're coming back on a year anniversary, we're going to have it again. Because I think there's an underlying to all this discussion, is a fundamental question about whether call is actually a viable strategy, period. And so if we're spending all this time on costs and capping and coming up with really tight programs on something that isn't even going to fix the problem, I think we are failing to address that as well. So let's address both. I'm not unwilling to test anything. Let's test everything possible, but let's be really clear on what our expected outcomes are.
The town administrator articulated a point that I guess I tried to make earlier, but maybe it wasn't clear. What he says is true. Based on the number of call firefighters that we have, if they all adhere to this, then we'd always have 4 people available, and the costs associated with this are included in the budget. We're not going to break the bank. We're never going to get to the point where we have 25 call firefighters like we did 20 years ago. And I know that. And that's why this proposal isn't going to break the bank. If you have reservations about it for other reasons, this is a way to try and make the call members of this department integrate and work within the framework that we have. And then the magic number is always 4. We have 3 career firefighters on duty, and we're always looking to have a 4th person there to always have that number 4 for 2 in and 2 out. And like I said, sometimes I'm there, sometimes a 4th career firefighter comes back, sometimes it's a call person. And unless we try something like this, we'll never know if the limited number of call firefighters that we have are going to fill in that gap that we have right now, which is not always having 4 people.
What is the cost difference between having your, if you were, say you were to have to hire another full-time firefighter, how does that cost compare to having your call firefighters?
Why don't we come back to that question, because now we're getting into the bigger strategy,
Well,
which is
I'm
the
just
other.
asking, though, is it more cost-effective to pursue this?
So the short answer is yes. So all in is about 100,000 for each firefighter. For a career person, roughly 100,000, all in. A little less, but anyway, round numbers, it's 100,000. For 6 call people at $2,400 apiece, you're a quarter of that cost.
Right, and that's, I'm just, that's my point, is just what is most cost-effective?
Well, and this proposal stays budget neutral unless we had a major influx of call firemen sign up once we had this in place, and we put a cap on it so that it remains budget neutral.
Well, fair enough that we can put together a more comprehensive overview of the call department and those other elements that you've alluded to, in terms of inviting, exciting, compensated.
Currently, are you expecting or projecting through whatever crystal ball you choose to use that your call firefighter response is going to be greater or less than you were thinking when you budgeted last fall? Right now, without this proposal.
Without the proposal, it won't be any more than I budgeted for last fall. I budgeted for a full response,
Okay.
assuming that we could come up with a way to incentivize people to come in.
Arthur, I agree that this lends to more conversations about the final direction that the department's gonna take, whether it be continued recruitment of call
Yeah.
or some other method of staffing. But I do think a refined proposal, as long as it's staying budget neutral, is okay.
Yeah, so.
As a
yeah.
means of trying to encourage some more call people. We've been asking for that effort. This is one way to facilitate that effort. And I'm
I didn't
okay
say
with it.
I didn't say I was opposed to it.
long as it stays-
I'm all
right.
for it, but I'm not all for it if if the only thing left is no call firefighters and the optics of us potentially creating even increased theoretical cost. And that's actually arguing in your corner, not in my corner. Because I think we need to be very cognizant of the optics of cost.
But if there's a cap built into
there's a
this
cap
so
built
that
in
it
and it's budget
stays
neutral.
budget neutral,
That's great.
right.
But then I think we also need to be prepared together that making gestures at something that we potentially inherently believe is a lost cause is a waste of time.
We won't know it's a lost cause until we try all the options.
I like your phrasing and your positioning, but I think we just need to be careful of what people really think about whether or not, the outcome is already figured out from the start. And if we're making efforts to increase call, who can argue with that? But if we're making, efforts to increase call and there's a perception that it's half-baked, then I think it's going to be labeled a waste of time. And I think that begs the question of, which is where I think we need additional conversation, is what is the strategy? Because if the optics are that we're kind of just circling around the drain on call, and that it's actually a foregone lost cause, the town, we can increase wages, that's fine, we cap it, whatever, but we're wasting time. Like, we need to be solving the bigger problem, which is where is fire going?
And I don't know how many other ways I can say this. Neither you nor I have a crystal ball, and we can't predict if it's going to work or we're circling the drain. We don't, so we have to try. So we have to try.
Friendly feedback, you sit in the station every day, I don't. So you're the first person that people are going to look to, not me.
And if this was easy, everybody would do it, and they would make money off of it, so we can't.
I know, at the end of the
So
day,
we do the best we can in trying to make it work.
And I sleep better at night because of it, so I actually thank you. But I also feel like we got a management problem here, not a fire problem. And on a management front, we can't just plead, we don't know. On a management problem, in terms of town management of employees and town cost, you can't just say, I don't know. It doesn't work that way.
Well, you're asking questions that are not knowable, and you question my management, and I am giving you the
I
best.
question your what?
I feel like you just question my management of the department, and my proposal.
I don't know, I have full faith in your management of the department. I'm questioning whether or not we collectively have a strategy going forward for fire over the next few years, when we potentially already know that call isn't going to solve the problem. And that's a discussion for a different day, and it's a much longer discussion, but it's a discussion that we need to have.
I think we've already laid down that strategy, and thanks to all of you, we have the 13th career firefighter, and we have to try and bolster the ranks and the participation, not necessarily the ranks, but the participation of the call force, so that the career firefighters plus the call firefighters give us that number of 4 on a regular basis, so we have 2 in and 2 out, and we can handle all the things that we need to.
For today, all right, let's just come back, let's agree to 2 things. Let's come back on a crisper proposal for the wages. I don't think there's any inherent opposition to that. I think there's just honestly a concern that that is a small piece of a much bigger question, and the bigger question that I do think you should come back with in the next month or 2 is a review of the strategy. Let's say over the next 5 to 10 years of where you think, not knowing the future, no one knows the future, but you are the leader of the department. Where is the department going? Where do you want to take it in terms of how we're going to staff in light of the fact that call is declining nationally as well as in this town, so that we actually build a plan for how to actually grow fire? Because that has huge impacts on a lot of the costs of the town that we're trying to gauge and plan for. And so it's an important contributing factor to how we figure out a path forward, not just for fire, but for the town. As a town, we know we spend a lot on fire, and we have to manage around that, even in light of the staffing issues that are very real that you're raising. So I think we should follow up on both those fronts.
So what are you going to do about the proposal?
Proposal is that we're coming back with a crisper version that has to do with not just wages, but hour caps to show that, in fact, it's completely budget neutral, as Greg was outlining.
And some of the items, Greg, you mentioned that the council was working on too, cleaning up.
Wording?
Yeah. Consolidating.
Thank you.
I'm good.
All right. I'm sorry, was there any other question? Did someone else have a question? No? Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
It's just minutes.
All right, moving on. The consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
You can't vote on it. Okay.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Second, yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Leah? You say aye?
I did.
3 yeses, 1 abstention, and 1 absentee. Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to correspondence.
So, the main topic here is a letter from the Friends of Council on Aging requesting movement towards securing or identifying a site for a senior center for the town. We have been talking about the possibility of having basically an addition to the new elementary school as one option. In meeting with the Friends, was it last week, week before?
Last week and then again today.
Right, okay. So anyways, in talking with the Friends about it, a desire to, before following full steam ahead on the school site, to look at other possible sites and to vet them and to see if there is a better site or not, and then to try to move forward with the best site. So I believe the Friends have formed a small subcommittee to research the various sites. For example, the parking lot at Norwood and North, the old burn dump, next door here, the green space next to Town Hall. Obviously attached to the elementary school would still remain on that list. Space between the parking lot at Coach Field and the tennis courts, there's land there. So those are some possibilities. There may be others that get uncovered. But I think the goal would be to, over the course of the next few weeks, a month or so, 2 months, would be to dive into those options and to sort of do a pro and con on them and to come up with what would be the best site. I think it'd be helpful if perhaps one of you were to join that small subgroup to help with that vetting. Certainly I and others on staff could help as well in terms of do some background information digging, that sort of thing. But it's been a topic that's been talked about, and there's an opportunity potentially at the school, but if not, the need is still there and it's still very high. I would like to think that there's a strong ability to acquire funding from private sources for this to a large degree. There may be grant opportunities as well. So I think all of those pieces need to start coming together on a site. And picking a site is sort of the next step.
Doesn't the school, I believe they're expecting an answer by the 12th from the board. That came up the other night at the meeting.
Yeah, that's a nice date. It's not a drop dead date.
Okay, just because I thought they were I was under the impression that it will affect what final plan they submit, because it will change the size of the space of that location at the school.
Right. So in an ideal world, yes, that would be decided upon. There's always an opportunity to amend proposals. So I know that we've got a couple members of the Friends here that they may want to speak to it as well. But you can.
Adele, do you have something that you want to say?
Yes, Adele Irvin. I spent 10 years as vice president of the Friends, and the whole issue of the senior center has never been far from our minds. But I think you're mixing oil and water in trying to marry the parks and recs who are dealing with young people with the elderly who have totally different needs in a senior center. You can't you can't just toss out one group of them at 4 o'clock, and it just doesn't work that way. And I just don't see any reason to be trying to combine the senior center with anything but a senior center. And I think it really, I don't think you're going to raise the money. It sounds to me like a political question. We just think it's good politics if we try to marry these two things. Well, I just don't think it's right. The seniors have very real needs in a senior center, and ideally, Gloucester gives you a very, very good idea of what a senior center can do. And while we're much smaller, the needs are the same and the activities are the same. And I hope that you will consider having a senior center for seniors and not try to marry us to every other group in town. Thank you.
I have to use
You do.
Yeah, sorry.
Sue Thorne, Bridge Street. We met, the subcommittee has met twice, and we met this afternoon. And as agreed, when Greg came in and spoke with us, we have compiled a list of various sites. We have listed some pros and some cons. And we have not heard back from everybody that is on the subcommittee to be sure that what we ultimately are going to submit to Greg meets with everyone's approval, but I think that will be coming up in the next day or two. But I think Greg's suggestion of bringing the subgroup and maybe one or two selectmen, so that we're having a conversation where both sides of the equation need to be involved, are involved. We're talking hypothetical here, and you guys have got the money here, you own the land that we can be looking at. We've got to be talking together. So we will get that submission to Greg in the next couple of days, I think, and it would probably move forward to your desk for your meeting on whenever it is, July 19, July 26, something like that. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Earl Morgan is also in on that subgroup, and together, if you have any questions, we'll answer them, but I think our correspondence with Greg will probably let you know a lot more.
I think once that list is defined, and it's into, Greg has it, we get it on our agenda as soon as we can.
Yeah.
And then have you folks join us, and we go through the list, go through the properties and the pros and the cons, and the feedback from here as to the pros and cons. And we start to winnow the list down.
I think, as was expressed in that letter, what we need to know is that there is a commitment from the Board of Selectmen that creating a senior center in Manchester is something that's important to do. We are the only community in a fairly wide geographic area that does not have one. And we pride ourselves on having a lot of things that a lot of other people don't. And this is something I don't think we can pride ourselves on. We don't have one, and I think we have an increasing population that deserves the kind of services and programs and facility that can respond to those needs. And so the Friends is just an organization that can raise some money to help the Council on Aging. We're not in a position to raise a couple of $1 million to build a senior center. So it has to be a cooperative effort, but it has to start with you guys at the top, because you own any of the land sites that might be possible to build a senior center on.
So I did talk to Susan, and I think we're kind of converging on a similar type of thought of getting a couple of people from the board to work in conjunction with you and the organization too. But I think prior to doing that, there needs to be a little discussion on the board as to what is our objective, what is our position. We don't necessarily have to solve that tonight. And I think.
Wouldn't expect you to.
No, I mean, the board getting its position together.
Right.
I think, and Greg, I'm looking at some notes I wrote, I'm not surfing the internet here. I sent you some notes, and I did talk to Susan, and we had a lengthy conversation about this, and I think there's a couple of things that we do as a board need to understand, and you said it yourself in recommending getting the board's help. I think the board, needs to establish whether the town wants to go ahead with a senior center at this time in general, and I think that fits in with a lot of the work from the strategic plan. If yes, then does the town want to go it alone or with someone like Essex on a location like the memorial site? If the town doesn't want to do that, or conversely, if Essex doesn't want to do that, which is a potential possibility, then does the town want to go ahead with the senior center somewhere else in town? And if so, where? And also, I think more specific to the board and maybe a slightly less concern to the organization is a question that I have is if we don't do it at Memorial, we do go it alone, I'm questioning what happens to that option of land at Memorial that, Essex maybe didn't want to go and build a senior center on, but that Manchester as a town still technically owns. And it falls under Parks and Rec. One of the proposals is the expansion of that footprint to 3,000 square feet, as I understand it.
4, I think it was.
That was three. Three.
Okay, they mentioned 4 the other night. So.
3,
Okay.
4, but let's just say it's 3. To me, again, I've already said it tonight already, like my interests are with the town of Manchester. To me, there's an opportunity cost or an option value, if I'm speaking in real estate terms, to that land. And maybe we don't build a senior center on it for a variety of reasons. Maybe let's assume we don't, just for the sake of argument. Then what do we do with it? And, I don't want to lose that opportunity value, if you follow what I'm saying. And that has to be explored as to what right do we have to that land. But
Isn't that land already encompassed by the lease to the school district?
It is.
Yeah.
And so you have the right to request an amendment to the lease
Right.
at any time.
So the absence of the senior center in that place at the school doesn't require us or obligate us to make any change. It currently is part of the school's lease. They have dominion over it.
yes, but I'm thinking about the town, specifically the macro town interest first is, do we lose the option to then do something with that land if we don't build a senior center there?
Yes, I mean,
Why?
it's part of it because we've leased it to the school district. They can do what they want with it.
It's not, but technically legally it's not their land.
No, but they have a lease to do the school operations on it, which articulates their.
I'm simply
we can't
creating
simply
option
step in
value
and-
for the town. If we don't do a senior center, then do we retain underneath the lease the right to use the town for something else if we so deem at some future point in time?
I
You
don't-
do, that's inherent in the lease,
Yeah.
because you can always go to the
So I'm
district and
simply
say,
creating space for the town to realize that there is very little developmental town land. And as we go down the road of addressing the senior center, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there is land that sits in the town. It's being used for other purposes, but we do retain the right to use that land for other purposes if we deem so according to the strategic plan in the future.
Well, just to wrap it up, I would say that we would look forward to an opportunity to sit down with some or all of you, so that when you get all of them, then it has to be a posted meeting. If we can do it with a subcommittee, I think, quite honestly, things can more effectively get accomplished.
Yeah, the last piece that I'm talking about, if we're solving the objective of the senior center, and if for a variety of reasons we deem that Memorial is not the location, I'm just on the side addressing a question of what happens to that land if it's not a senior center.
Right.
And, I would question that whether it is the school district's decision to use that land or whether it's the town's. But we don't have to necessarily have a purpose for that land. I'm just putting an asterisk that that's land that the town should be able to consider if it wants to. Question?
Earl Morgan. I live on Summer Street in Manchester. I've been a resident here for 4 years. I'm a little confused. Are we talking about the addition onto the memorial school?
As it relates to the senior center?
You're talking about land that we might lose?
No. I'm talking about a land that currently is used by Parks and Rec that was proposed, or that is retained for Parks and Rec's purposes, that is potentially a proposed site for a senior center.
Oh, and what site is that?
The memorial location in terms of the new developmental plan for the school.
That addition to the school is a 3,000 square foot rectangle.
Yep.
It wasn't even proposed as a senior center. It was proposed as Parks and Recreation. And then somewhere along the line, the senior center was proposed there.
Right.
But are you saying if it's not used for a senior center, you lose it?
No, I'm not, no. I'm not.
Okay, because it's not an ideal site for the senior center. I'll
Right,
tell you.
but that, well, yeah. We're good.
Okay.
So when is the subcommittee meeting? When?
We met this afternoon, and we're waiting for response from the 5 members to the draft that has been drawn up, summarizing our pluses and minuses for various sites.
And then when will you meet again?
We are at your mercy. I mean, I think we do not have anything future scheduled,
Okay.
just pending whatever
So
you.
why don't we do this? Why don't we, we'll reconvene this topic at the next Board of Selectmen meeting and try to come to at least a preliminary position of the board, and I emphasize very preliminary.
So when you say very preliminary, do you mean whether or not the Board of Selectmen supports looking into options for a senior center? Because I thought that was resolved a very long time ago and that we all said that we were.
I believe so, however, my understanding is that the town of Essex doesn't really agree with that position.
What?
It's independent of that.
Right.
You don't need their permission,
Yep. Well, the question, yeah, so
so.
I think these are the questions, this is a conversation that Susan wanted to be here, so that's part of the reason why I'm deferring to the next meeting, is that I'm not seeking to get a conclusion here.
Well,
So they're working on putting their list of sites and pros and cons together. Once that's done, to their satisfaction, they're gonna get it to Greg, and it'll be on our next meeting agenda.
but I
To
thought,
talk about the pros and cons of the different spaces.
But in the
Or-
meantime, if you wanted one or two of you to help with
Right.
that process,
Okay.
that would jumpstart it.
Well, and that's what I was trying to get at, but then it kind of sounded as though they're a couple weeks ahead of us in that.
I understand
got a
what
lot
Sue
of the
says, that
work
we were
done.
trying to meet them somewhere in mid-July.
so I thought what Greg was saying was, in the process of them going off and discussing options, that they're ultimately going to come back to us. It might be a good idea for one or more of us to be in that.
Got it. I will be more than happy. It just depends on my timing. If it's during the day, it's more difficult for me, but I know during the day may be more applicable to some folks on the committee. So know that I'm ready, willing, and more than happy. God bless. So be in touch.
And
Great.
if you want to, I'm happy as well.
There you go.
Does that sound all right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you envision meeting before you officially meet as a Board of Selectmen?
I think that these two should engage with you as soon as you want them to engage. I think the board needs to have this conversation again with Susan present, because she's played a role in the strategic plan. She's also played a role, I think, in this particular topic. And I think in order ultimately for progress to be moved forward even further out, you know, we'll work through these two as representatives and, you know, try to meet the timelines that you're talking about over the course of July.
Okay.
I have a side question that vaguely relates to this. Does the current plan at the school still include the 1,500 square foot extension for Parks and Rec?
Yes, I believe it does.
Okay.
But that, too, would require only Manchester funding.
Right.
So I'm not convinced that we need to do that just for Park and Rec.
They would just continue to use spaces the way they're utilizing them now? Is
Correct.
that, okay. As long as that guarantee is there for the building use.
So, for example,
they do now.
they do the Y does similar programming at Essex without dedicated space.
That's, right,
So,
right.
you know, if it's just Park and Rec, I'm hard pressed to justify
Right,
the dollars that would take to
Right.
do that 1,500 to 1,800 square foot box.
I agree. I agree. Just the caveat needs to be that Parks and Rec will still have the ability to use the building spaces like they do now when the new building is built, like they
Right, they do
Do and
lose some,
use and pay.
so, you know.
They use the cafeteria, they use the gym, they,
Right, they also have some storage and some
Right.
play space in the basement.
right, right,
That goes away under the new plan.
the storage. So we'd have to
The summer program.
figure out, I'm sorry?
Summer playground area that they use, that won't have a replacement.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So we need to have an understanding of how those programs are gonna function. Because they're big programs in this community. Like the after-school program is, like all of the extra classes that Parks and Rec offers.
Isn't that what they're talking about using for that space, right? Summer
Point of
break,
information,
playground?
I really don't know.
Pretty sure. That's
Sorry.
what they said the other night.
Hold on. Sorry.
point of information. What does the Parks and Recs do with Essex? Because we have a regional school, and if you're going to combine Parks and Recs or the
There's,
building, you're going to be having to deal with the Essex families, and so I think I mean, I just don't know what that is.
I don't think there's any proposal to.
Essex has their own after-school program, or there is an after-school program that's facilitated in Essex Elementary by the YMCA.
Right,
The after-school program at Manchester Memorial School is facilitated by Manchester's Parks and Rec Department.
I see.
So therefore, the Parks and Rec Department utilizes space within the Manchester Elementary
Right.
School for
Right.
that after-school program.
Thank you.
Our Parks and Rec also utilizes space for their robust summer program.
Right, thank you.
So that's gonna go away,
Well, or it needs to
or,
evolve to using other space.
right.
When is your next meeting?
We haven't got that far
That's our
yet.
next topic.
Stay tuned.
Don't leave.
It says June 18th.
Yes, that's our next topic.
That hasn't been firmed up.
No,
That may be changed.
Okay.
Was there anything else on this item?
No, just for, my thought is that once Greg gets the summary of our discussions and research, we need to pick a date when we can
Yes.
get together.
Yes.
We can combine it with your meeting, fine, or maybe
Or a
we should
separate
be
one,
meeting
yeah.
before or after.
Okay. Greg, was there anything else?
I'm
Okay.
good on that.
Do you want to go to your town administrator's report?
Yeah, so first on the town administrator's report is looking at the calendar
Yes.
for meetings. So, if you were to follow your normal
Leave yet,
schedule.
Sue. We're about to,
thank you.
we can leave.
So your normal schedule would have you meeting on the 18th of June. There was some talk about pushing it out a week and going to the 25th. You know, so it's hard to get perfect attendance here with summer schedules.
Well, I think Susan's away. I'm away. So.
For what, the 18th?
Yeah.
Ah,
Right,
Well-
so that was, so we're down to 3.
We certainly can meet, 3 people can meet. The question is if 3 people can advance the agenda on all the topics that we've now thrown to the next meeting.
And
well,
I don't believe
no,
we- I don't
absolutely
believe-
not. I mean,
I
we
don't
would,
believe 3
Why?
should be.
I'd be happy to. It would be a foolish thing to do. I think we could reduce the agenda to have something that would fit, but I think it would be an arbitrary and pointless exercise.
Okay, so I think that's where the underlying question of the 25th came up.
So the meeting, 25th for me is a fine date. I know you're not going to be able to be here.
Better
Um,
4 than 3.
So better 4 than 3, and if there's something in particular that you really, really want to be part of, then you should, you know, assess the agenda for
Mhm.
that meeting and ask
Susan,
Susan to push out whatever's appropriate. As far as July is concerned, I think I'm flexible in there. The only place where I think I'm gonna have any issue is maybe on August 6th, and if I'm out for one meeting, okay, that won't kill anybody. I'll work around that, and I think we can plan far enough ahead on that one for if there's anything on the agenda that I really care about, we could find a way to push it.
So would we meet then the June 25th and then again on July 2nd?
July 9th.
So probably wait until the 9th.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't be here on the 9th. But that doesn't mean you can't meet.
Yep. Is Susan on tap for the 9th?
Yes.
Go to the calendar, that would be,
Whether or not we can get away with only one meeting in July will depend.
Well, that was another question that I think you were going to.
So boards, a lot of boards will skip at least a meeting, some skip a month in the summer. It varies town by town. So my own schedule, I have struggles on the 23rd of July and the 6th of August. Those both are problematic. The 6th I definitely won't be here for. I could probably be here for the 23rd, but it's a little challenging.
So one other proposal is to move the July meeting to the 16th.
Yeah, you can meet once in July on the 16th, and then pick it up again on August 13th and 27th.
And based on the issues we've discussed tonight, to Arthur's point that we've asked people to come back with more information, refined, whatever, are we getting out to July 16th and causing us
I think in the case,
I think
consternation?
you could I would do fire on the 25th.
On the 25th, okay.
Of
What
June.
about the
well, I
seniors?
would do the wage
Yes.
question.
Yes,
I would
that's-
push the strategy question.
Yes, I agree with
Yes, yes, we need to split it in two.
Yeah, I agree.
So then would it be putting the senior center conversation out to the 16th of July?
16th.
Is that, now they're gone. I mean, is that
All right.
fitting into a timeline for us? A suitable timeline if we are looking to, well, we wouldn't be advancing anything until the spring.
Correct. I'm reading the tea leaves, but they tell me that we don't try to do a senior center / park and rec expansion to the elementary school as part of the fall votes.
Right.
I think Essex is
Okay.
really leery of that.
Yeah.
It muddies the water, and I think it's not necessary. You can just have it as a standalone issue. So I'm under the assumption that it's not going to proceed as part of the school vote. So waiting to the 16th of July to advance that is
It's fine.
fine.
That's what I want.
But I'm making that assumption when I say that.
and then when in August? Would we go back to 1st and 3rd?
You can, yes.
Or you are away?
So Eli and I are away on the 6th.
Probably I'm away.
The other thing we should be somewhat cognizant of is paring down the meeting so much that we end up with an agenda that's massive.
Right.
I would almost make the suggestion that we meet on that night. We don't have Greg, we don't have Eli. If we know we've got 4 of us, we can do it.
Right,
Right.
What night was
Miss
that, the
you,
23rd?
we'd miss you, but we could do it,
the 6th,
August 6th.
August 6th.
Oh,
And the other thing we were talking about was a joint FinCom
Right, so that'll
in
be.
July as well, right?
Right, that was targeting that week of the 9th.
Right, I think, why do I have the 12th in my head?
11th, I think, we probably got it. I think I actually put it in.
I
thought we
have
were
it in
targeting
here.
The Wednesday, the
Oh,
11th.
Yep, and I have it in here already. So
So you could meet the 11th as your meeting that week with the FinCom, and
Yep.
then go to the 16th as your one meeting in July, as your
yeah, I'm not
standalone.
necessarily advocating for one meeting in July. I'm more just trying to,
do we know, has that July 11th meeting been pushed out to FinCom? Has Maury done that?
I don't believe he has.
Okay, I just, people's calendars are gonna fill quickly and all that, so if we can get a sense of whether that July 11 is happening, because if not, we're gonna have to find another day.
Right,
And there are 5
Quickly.
Mondays in July, so,
right.
I mean, who's not around the 9th of July
I'm not, but that doesn't mean you can't meet.
and the 20th of July? I mean, if we were to do
23rd.
2, right,
The, what, the 20th?
instead of 1, if
23rd,
23rd, can't see that far.
it's okay.
But as opposed to trying to do 1?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, we gotta be careful that we don't end up
Right.
with an agenda that puts us
Right.
in this
Are we heading in
room
that
for
direction?
3.5 or 4 hours.
Are we heading in that direction?
Well, no, not if we,
Not at the moment.
Right. So why don't we tentatively come up with a proposal, and let's work with it, and then we can verify it on the 25th.
okay, so we're definitely on June 25th.
Yes. Are we agreeing to that?
Yep.
Yep.
Come back early.
Sure. Absolutely.
What,
And then,
and then, I'm happy to,
You can go with the 9th and the 23rd
sure.
as your regulars, and then, I mean, you can do your regulars. The 9th, the 23rd, this August 6th, and August 20th would be the normal 1st and 3rd.
and if we put them in, we have them tentatively.
Let's
and
do
if-
that, but then let's ask the question on the 25th, whether or not the agenda for the 9th is loaded enough that we have to have it, or can
Robust
that be
enough
moved to
that
the,
we have
can
to.
that be moved to the 16th?
Okay, so we go back to July.
Because if it's a light agenda on the 9th, I am agreeing with Muffin, I don't want to create a 5-hour meeting.
Yeah,
But if the 9th and the 16th, if the 9th and the 23rd end up being both light, then it doesn't
Right.
make a whole lot of sense.
Yep.
And I think we'll have more, more insight on that on the 25th. than we
Sure.
will today.
Okay. That is the,
So the fire timing is the 25th, we revisit with an actual proposal tied
On the
to
wages,
to wages
wages.
with caps.
yes.
And then we ask the chief either on the 9th or the 16th, or do you want to push him to the 23rd, the 16th or the 23rd? Give him the more time, I think, the better.
For the overall strategy,
Macro picture, it doesn't need to be,
so the only issue I had with that, and I don't want to dig into this too deep, but there was this larger regionalization discussion that was supposed to be having, and it was supposed to be driven at a multi-board level. I I feel like we're almost setting ourselves up for handing the chief conflicting instructions. Go off and develop the strategy, but we're gonna be working on regionalization.
Regionalization wasn't specific to fire. Regionalization
It was
is a-
not, but it definitely, there's definitely discussion of it in the context of fire. So I'm a little concerned about handing him marching orders, say, come back to us with.
The ask of the chief is to ask for his perspective on what's best for the department. I mean, he is the owner of the department. And whether, you know,
But I think Eli's right. Part of the ask is to look at regional options
Yeah.
for fire.
among many services as a concept.
Right.
That is completely separate from what is the current. I would expect that the chief would have a current operating strategy for now and years going forward on an ongoing basis. The notion that any department is operating for the here and now is concerning, and partly contributing to the level of focus of a lot of discussions that we're having. We may or may not do regionalization. I can't say that the chief can wait until we've arrived at that a magical conclusion and all of a sudden start then the notion of a strategy for fire. That's crazy.
So, I'm sorry to reopen this, but I feel like I gotta say this. I mean, the whole point of last year and us setting up that 13th position was to establish the chief with a system, and sufficient resources to run the department for a number of years until we came up with what we thought was the overarching long-term solution, which was presumably going to include some regionalization support. So far as I know, the message that we delivered to the chief last year was, we're granting you this request for the 13th, so that you'll have the resources to run the department to a standard that we both have agreed will meet the medium-term needs of Manchester. And we did not give him a mandate at that point. Now you have to go out and figure out the long-term strategy. I thought that we had resolved this aspect of the chief's strategy.
I don't think we've ever concluded that regionalization is the direction to go. We haven't done that analysis.
We haven't concluded that regionalization was the way we wanted to go. We felt strongly that we needed to look into it.
We do.
And that was going to require something beyond just the chief himself driving that.
Agreed.
So,
But that's to be determined, and we don't know the outcome of that analysis. So do you not have a long-term strategy in operating even in temporary space because you're suspending a future decision for an analysis that hasn't been concluded? Because that dictates everything to do with the decisions about getting back to the debate about the call. Are we going to continue to have call issues come up again and again and again and again and again for the next 5 to 10 years?
So I guess so. I've been interpreting the chief's current proposal on call a little bit differently, I think, than you have. I don't view it as a major shift. I view it as him making an adjustment. I view it as him making an adjustment within the budget constraints that we have already set for him to best make those forces work, fitting within the constraints of a mix of a small number of call, overtime, and the 13th that we added to make things work in the medium term. I feel like we essentially laid the groundwork to tell the chief, operate within this framework
Right.
until we, as a larger group, figure out the long-term plan. I thought we delivered that message loud and clear, painfully clear last year. And so I really do feel like going to the chief now and saying, what's your long-term strategy? I would be, as the chief, confused about that direction.
Okay. I don't see it as confusing. I think the town in general has to look at regionalization on a number of fronts, including fire, including police, including DPW, including Parks and Rec, including all the things that we're trying to shoulder on our own. That's an analysis that has to be done. The conclusion of the analysis is yet to be determined. In the absence of that conclusion, do we have departments just operating year to year?
Well, what's the alternative? I
The
mean,
alternative is that the departments have a strategy for today and the next 12 months and some opinion about years out until that point where upon which we have greater clarity on the concept of regionalization, which we don't even know whether it's going to work. What I don't want to have happen is departments manage to today and the next 12 months and nothing beyond that, and then have us maybe or maybe not get conclusive evidence about regionalization. And we say we don't want to do it. And then we're left with departments who have no long-term view. Having a regionalization strategy, which I completely continue to feel is the right thing to go, and the town voted that it was the right thing to go, is something that we should continue to pursue wholeheartedly. That doesn't give any department the license to not look beyond the next 12 months. And I don't see it as a conflict.
I think, or my takeaway has always been throughout the fire staffing conversations that it would, and I might be wrong, but that it would be this chief's stance that he sees long-term, fully staffed
Yeah.
with full-time career firefighters. That's what
I
he
think that's quite clear.
sees. That's what he sees as the long-term goal.
That's
So
quite
in-
clear.
so in-
Combined with the trend in call, which I think is evident to everybody.
I think not putting words in the chief's mouth, but I think he sees call as non-existent. So his long-term, when you were suggesting we need a long-term approach, where do you see 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? It would be, in the chief's mind or description, fully staffed, full-time career
I know that.
firefighters.
I know that.
So that's what his position is
Right.
now.
But I guess what I'm suggesting is these programs to get call are all fine and well, but they seem like a foregone conclusion. So why are we wasting time?
Well, it's another board conversation, because we, as a board, have continually asked and encouraged/asked the fire chief to continue working the call firefighter
Yes.
avenue aspect.
We have a chief who just openly said that he's not sure it really is ever going to work.
I hear what you're saying. I do. I viewed this on the agenda tonight as his offer as a means to try to continue to work
And let's do it.
with the call firefighter numbers and see if incentivizing would encourage additional people to come on board as call men or women.
I heard the same thing.
Okay, I'm just so I'm clear in what I heard and I'm thinking.
But I also heard
So-
somebody that doesn't necessarily believe in the viability of the whole thing.
I don't disagree with that. But the larger, I think to Eli's
So if that's
point, the
case-
larger.
If that's the case, how far does that go? Because what is the long-term view?
And that's where we're at. Though, that's.
Which may or may not be regionalization.
We got ourselves to that point to ask ourselves the question, what's the long-term view? And that's how far we've gotten. What's the long-term view? We haven't taken any additional steps yet to do any research and study to see what the long-term view is.
But I would say, to your point, though, about all of these boards and departments going year by year, we do need to look farther down in the long term. And I think that that's a very good point.
Well, I think some of that work's already there in the long-term budgeting. that takes place.
Well, I just mean in terms of, what you can and can't regionalize. And,
I mean, yeah, the regional conversation really, in my mind, just started about 6
Yeah.
or 8 months ago, in the process of working through the budget. We just got finished with town meeting. Now it's that next giant step in conversations about regional services and where,
right.
who, what, when, where, and how they fall within the community. I see that's where we're now ready to start to do. So I understand why the chief came in with the proposal that he did.
I don't think there's anything wrong with his proposal, but the notion that the chief is only responsible for short-term management issues
I think
is
that's,
not, I'm not okay with that, while I'm simultaneously completely supportive of us looking at regionalization. It's all on the table. And what does the chief think is best? And if you feel like you already have that answer, then that's great. But a year has passed since we've had that discussion.
Question?
Adele?
Isn't it really obvious that the call system around the country is fading out? In other words, that we're all faced with the fact that we have got to have full-time firemen. However way you get them, the issue is I think the difference between the full-time fire person and the fact that the call system at its best is not working well.
That's understood.
And therefore, that why are we beating that dead horse?
I don't think we're beating that dead horse, though, but I think we're realizing that if we end up in a day where a national trend does take further hold in Manchester and a number of other towns around here, Manchester is going to be further and further on its own to burden the cost of fire.
Yeah.
The question will be, can Manchester truly support that cost?
right.
And
Right, but that's-
regionalization is one way of addressing it.
But that's where
There's
regionalization
a
comes
counter
in.
argument to not regionalizing, which the chief himself wrote a very eloquent letter in the Cricket about. And so if we don't regionalize, what is our strategy? And I would look to the chief for that strategy. So I think it's actually perfectly okay to ask the chief to come back with a strategy.
Oh, sure.
And it probably won't include regionalization based on the letter that he wrote to the Cricket. So if it's not regionalization, then what is it? And if it's not call and it's not regionalization, what does the future of the fire
Right.
department look like? So that we get a sense of what it's gonna
Oh,
cost.
what is there beyond those?
I don't know, but I'm not the fire expert.
No, but I'm not either, but I'm a
Chief
taxpayer.
is.
But I'm a taxpayer, and
I know.
I
That's
think
why we need to have the discussion.
that-
And it's a passionate discussion, and that's okay. Because what is it gonna cost?
Right, but I don't think it's up to him to make that.
It's not up to him to decide what it's gonna cost or what the town's gonna pay, but it is up to him to design a force for the future. The taxpayer's not gonna do that, and I don't think the Board of Selectmen are the people to do that. And so what's that design look like? That's the only thing that's being asked. And it's probably not gonna be regional based on what I already know him saying. But I wanna still know what it looks like, because we may actually have to end up paying for it. And we should know that now.
We're going to be paying for it no matter what.
But we already pay more almost than anyone else in the state on a per capita basis, so how much more are we paying?
Well, I think you have every right to ask the financial questions, but I think we're faced with the fact that the whole system, as it is now, with call firemen,
I don't think the chief's being blamed for the
it-
demise of call firefighters.
it's not working.
That's not, I don't think there's any debate about that. But what do we do in light of that is the
Yeah.
question.
I meant to ask the chief while he was here, and I completely forgot. Where are we with the hiring?
Now we have one new that's
Okay.
on, and I don't,
So that means we're still, so we have 2 open positions?
right.
Okay.
I know that they did another round this morning. I haven't heard the results.
Okay, okay. I just, in terms of the summer and vacations and coverage and where that, if he maybe could give us a sense
yep.
of how he sees the staffing will go this summer. With, it's the premium vacation time, and we struggle sometimes getting shifts covered anyway now if we're short one or two. Maybe that's an opportunity for a couple of the call-men.
Okay.
Anything else, Greg?
In terms of my reports, no, except for, we do have a proclamation for a retiring teacher.
Oh.
So if we could add that to an approval, that would be wonderful.
Proclamation for whom? Eileen Salucci, is it?
Eileen Salucci?
Salucci.
Yeah. So a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion
Thank
to,
you.
what do we say, sign?
Yeah, sign the
Sign.
proclamation.
Sign a proclamation for retiring teacher Eileen Salucci at Memorial School.
I second that.
Okay.
Any discussion, all in favor?
Any discussion, all in favor?
Cellucci.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I would love to present that.
That would be wonderful. It's Monday at 9 o'clock,
In the morning,
yes.
this coming Monday?
This
I
coming
think I can
Monday.
do that.
I appreciate you stepping right in and.
I
helping
would
with
love
this.
to do that. That would be,
Uh,
she's been a wonderful, okay. So
we have
that's
to sign Susan's one.
June 11th? Yes.
Yes, June 11th.
At 9 o'clock at the memorial?
Is it at Memorial?
I don't know.
I'm looking at.
You know what, I've got to, can I confirm that with you, Becky?
Absolutely.
Because
Thank you,
She
Sonia.
said something about a joint school,
Right, assembly.
and so I'm not sure where it is, but
Okay.
I will find out tomorrow morning.
So you can read my other material.
Yeah.
I don't need to belabor it tonight.
All right,
I have a question.
yeah.
Under town clerk's notes, she said there was something about exhumation.
Oh, I saw that too.
What's that about?
About what?
An
Exhumations?
exhumation.
It was on page 52 of
Christina's
the,
notes.
Yeah, on Christina's notes, on page 52 of the packet we received.
I saw that too.
Oh, I just turned right to it.
What's the
This
sentence?
office is
It's
still
page-
working with council and personal research. The party will
Yeah, right here.
also need permission from the landowner. Perform
Oh,
research and so on.
Yes, there's a grave that wants to be exhumed,
Really?
and there's some legal questions that we need to have answered before we allow that.
I think that must be a first.
Really?
Yeah, are we able to know why?
Um,
Or is this just,
I wouldn't want to, at
Yeah.
this point, it's sensitive information,
Okay.
Oh,
so.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, no, I think that, well, Mark Hammond could probably tell you if it had
yeah,
ever
I was just
happened
curious
before.
about, it's like, what was that note
Yeah.
about? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can give you a little more information offline.
We exhumed my father's grave in Fitchburg, Mass. And moved him to Cape Cod to be buried with the rest of the family.
Oh,
People do it.
Yes, they do.
okay.
We did it. Which blew one of my aunt's minds. She's,
Well, it's just not an everyday.
Right, no, it's not an everyday occurrence. That's why we're making sure we're dotting
Yeah,
every I.
Yeah, yeah, wow, interesting.
So she is working with Michelle on this one.
Susan needs to be,
We can sign for her.
yeah. Or do you get like a stamp?
Good catch, I saw it.
All right. Anything else? Can I get a motion to
Adjourn, so moved.
adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we have it.